I'll judge you, but it'll be So I'm going to be reading from Coils, which is a fantasy comedy, and it's for sale right over there. In this scene, my heroine Cressida has come to the Greek underworld trying to rescue her Aunt June. She's fallen in with several gangs who run the underground ambrosia trade, one of which is run by Persephone. And she is, in this chapter, she is disguised, wearing a glamour, a magic disguise, sneaking into the Elysian fields to steal some ambrosia for this gang. And I just took my bookmark out without having my place, and then turned the book around. There it is. Cressida tried to imagine how a hero of legend might walk. She tried to recall everything she'd seen Agamemnon do. He'd never been in the Elysian fields, but he had a big ego, so she supposed she could do worse, pompous role model-wise. She strode, a wide-legged walk, one hand swinging freely, the other resting on the pommel of her sword. There were nymphs everywhere, mostly clustered around the entrance. The flowers gang was on high alert. When they looked at her, she gave them a bright smile, seeking to project the image Adonis had put in her head, a returning hero who wants to tell everyone about his heroic deeds from every life he's ever lived, and who doesn't care how boring he might be. And if he ran out of the time he killed the whatever of wherever, he would happily regale everyone with the time he loosened the really stuck lid, or the time he slowed down so some baby ducks could cross the road. She hoped her smile conveyed the right mix of hope, ego, and immunity to the boredom of others. When several nymphs wouldn't meet her eyes and several more ran as she veered toward them, she thought she must be doing something right. She headed for a dense grove of oaks and saw a lone, bark-skinned figure standing in the shadows, her dark tones blending in with her surroundings. A cluster of nymphs stood nearby, whispering and casting dark looks toward the gate. The dryad looked to Cressida with eyes so blue they glowed like sapphires under a bright light. Her gaze flicked to the nymphs, then she looked down at her fingernails, expression screaming, "Play it cool." Cressida strode up to the dryad and shouted, "You'll never guess at all the completely heroic things I've done." The dryad froze before smiling hesitantly, her teeth bright where they weren't covered in moss. Really?" she said. The nymphs ceased muttering and stared. "Yes," Cressida said, "in the life I just finished, I held open myriad doors for people I didn't even know. I once unclogged the toilet of a neighbor, even though I was busy running my Fortune 500 company that was featured in many top magazines. I once gave change to a homeless man. I braked for turtles. Would you like to hear about various monsters I might have slain in my former life?" The nymphs were edging away, but at the mention of a former life, they ran. The dryad craned her neck and peered over Cressida's shoulder. "Okay, they're gone," she said. "Nice speech." "Thanks," Cressida said. "You got the stuff?" Feeling like she was in a really bad movie. "Ready to go." The dryad pulled a sack from a hole in the tree trunk. "Any idea when things are going to cool down? It's not easy being a woodland creature that's not part of the flowers gang." "You'll have to talk to your regulars about that," Cressida said. "I'm more concerned about how I'm going to get out of here. Just keep going from one group to the other with your loud hero routine. Make your way toward the gate, and when you're close enough, run. You have someone waiting on the other side to help you, right?" "Well, they'd probably help by shouting, 'Throw me the ambrosia!' but they'd have to pull her fat out of the fire first." "Sure," she said. The dryad hooked the ambrosia bag onto Cressida's backpack. She imagined it looked rather silly, a bag on top of a bag, but the nymphs wouldn't even see it past the glamour. Cressida ambled back toward the gate, still putting on the air of someone desperately seeking eye contact so she could regale them with stories about that one time she found a small child crying in a grocery store and had done the right thing by finding the first woman who wasn't fast enough to get away, thrusting the child upon her. She supposed heroes did actual heroic things too. There must have been people in the Elysian fields who'd saved others, who'd fought against invaders and whatnot. Maybe they were hiding too, and the only people you could find if you went looking were blowhards who couldn't stop talking about themselves, or the various children of the sea and forest who were doomed to listen to them for eternity. She could see the bridge now, the nymphs clustered around it still. Her sense of impending danger wanted to avoid their eyes and slink recital, hands in her pockets. It was hard to maintain the thought that to remain unobtrusive, she had to be as obtrusive as possible. When a nymph not only met her eyes but approached her with a fond smile, Cressida fought the urge to wince or let her face freeze into a rictus of a grin rather than a smile. She put on what she hoped was a pleased look and not a desperate one. "Hello," the nymph said. She bore striking resemblance to the one Cressida had seen before, but they all had traits in common. Perfect mouths and bright, intelligent eyes. They differed slightly in hair color, but she did recall that all nymphs were supposed to be sisters or something. Then again, none of the ancient myths featured much genetic drift. "Hello, fair nymph," Cressida said, wondering what her grammar voice sounded like. Have I told you about the time I slew a bat that got caught in my greenhouse? Not nearly as exciting as some of the things we got up to in the old days, but well worth a listen. Instead of fleeing, the nymph brightened. How very interesting. Tell me more. It's a test, Cressida thought. Yes. She told June's story about killing a bat with a hockey stick, adding a few embellishments that would have made June proud. Through it all, the nymph retained a look of curious fascination, but there was something else about her eyes, a certain glazed look that even her wide-eyed stare couldn't disguise, as if she was practiced in listening while tuning the speaker out. She even nodded at the right places and muttered things like, "How exciting," and "That must have been a surprise," but they sounded like autopilot. As Cressida hoped, the nymph said, "Well, I better not keep you at the end of the story," and ran. Cressida tried to look disappointed as she said goodbye, then she turned quickly and felt a jostling thump. She froze, her heart hammering. She turned slowly, but she knew what had happened. She'd hit a nymph with her backpack, invisible to everyone who didn't already know it was there. The nymph squinted at the air around Cressida's back, her brow furrowed. Cressida ran. The nymph called out and everyone began to turn. Cressida tried to run faster. As before, the same tree reached for her just as before she ducked under its grasping branches. She reached for her sword, but roots erupted from the ground and tangled around her knees, tripping her. She fought to rise, but they held her tightly. "Unhand me," she tried. "I wish to go mock those who were not brave enough to save it." The nymphs clustered around her, petite women with flowers in their hair or along their garments, but their frowns said they were anything but twee and jolly. "A glamour," one said. "We didn't expect that." "Whoever is cutting us out has some powerful resources," another said. "That's right," Cressida said. "This ambrosia is for Persephone, so you'd better keep your roots to yourself." The nymphs looked to one another, and the tree stood Cressida upright, though it didn't let her go. They smiled at one another. "Well, who else would it be?" the original nymph said. "It figures she'd try to go around us." "She'll think better of it from now on," a small one said, "once she sees what we're going to do to her messenger." Well, that wasn't good. They should have been trembling in fear, but they sported evil little smiles. They didn't fear the dread goddess of the underworld. Why should they? She couldn't walk among them. "Bind her arms," another nymph said. The tree gave up its roots, breaking them off, and the nymphs tied Cressida's hand in front of her, binding her arms to her body. She didn't know if they could see the backpack or the sword yet or not, but she wasn't going to mention either. More humans wandered close as the nymphs led her farther into the Elysian fields. They had to be heroes of legend. Cressida fell to her knees. "Oh, spare me, children of the flowers. I have committed no wrong against your goddess." They looked at one another, then down at her. "Yes, you did," one said. "You stole the—" "Is it a crime," she said, "to seek out heroes of legend, to seek someone to be my champion against foul monsters and evil gods?" "What the hell are you—" "Whoa!" Cressida cried. "Is there not a hero who will aid me in my nearly impossible task for which there are great rewards? Is there no one handsome enough to rescue a frail woman who has wandered into the underworld? Is there no time to maybe sign a few autographs?" The heroes looked to each other, and quite a few brows were furrowing, and looks were getting cast back and forth. She saw something start in the eyes of one or two, something that said they hadn't had a new story to tell in thousands of years. A nymph hauled on her arm. "Get up," it said. "Stop, forest children," someone cried. "Unhand that baby." Cressida nearly cried out in triumph, not even bothering to correct the maiden part. The less he knew, the better. "Stay out of this," the nymph said. "Yes," Cressida called. "Do not risk your safety, hero. I would only ask to be rescued by the bravest of the brave, whose bravery is unsurpassed by any braver heroes in the old tales of braveness." She was running out of ways to say brave, but the mumbling had grown, and now it was turning into calls of, "Yes, unhand her," and "How dare you?" The nymphs had converged in a circle, facing out, and the roots of the nearby trees cracked like whips around them. "Get back," they said. "Do you know who we work for?" The heroes cried out various names of darker gods and monsters. One hero pleaded with the nymphs, but others shouted threats and warnings. When the first person in the Siler's chiton leapt from the fray and tackled the nymph to the ground, the fight was on, fists and roots flying. Cressida lunged to her feet and fled into the trees, arms still bound as she headed for the bridge and the gate.